Am I the only one that didn't know the full horror of the Black Death? The Black Death was a devastating plague that swept through continents with relentless force. It ravaged Europe and Asia in the 14th century, leaving a trail of death and despair in its wake. The plague likely originated in Central Asia, a region bustling with trade and movement. It spread westward along the Silk Road and other trade routes, carried by merchants and travelers. The disease was carried by fleas, which thrived on the blood of rats. These fleas lived on rats that infested ships and caravans, making the plague highly mobile and difficult to contain. The Black Death was terrifying in its symptoms and speed. It caused painful swellings called buboes, which were often black or dark purple in color. These buboes appeared in the groin, neck and armpits, areas where the lymph nodes are located. The swellings were excruciating and often burst, releasing foul-smelling pus. Victims suffered from fever, chills and vomiting. The disease progressed rapidly, and most died within days of showing symptoms, leaving little time for any form of treatment. The plague was called the Great Mortality due to the sheer number of deaths it caused. Entire families and villages were wiped out, and mass burials became a common sight. The Black Death had a profound impact on the world. It killed millions of people, reducing the population drastically and altering the course of history. It disrupted societies and economies, leading to labor shortages and a decline in trade. The social fabric of communities was torn apart, and fear and paranoia spread as quickly as the disease itself. This plague remains one of the deadliest pandemics in human history. Its consequences shaped the course of civilization, influencing everything from medical practices to social structures. The Black Death left an indelible mark on human history, a grim reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating power of disease. The Black Death arrived in England in 1348. It came ashore at the port of Melcombe Regis, now known as Weymouth in Dorset. The plague likely arrived on a ship carrying trade goods from Gascony. This ship was carrying infected rats. The rats quickly spread the fleas carrying the plague. From the southern coast, the Black Death spread rapidly. It moved along trade routes and into towns and villages. The plague traveled with merchants, travelers and soldiers. It reached London by the autumn of 1348. Within months, it was ravaging the entire country. The Black Death's impact on England was devastating. It is estimated that between 1/3 and 1/2 of the population died. The plague did not discriminate. It affected people of all ages, social classes and walks of life. People were terrified as the plague spread. They didn't understand how the disease was transmitted. This lack of knowledge led to the spread of fear and superstition. Many believed the plague was a punishment from God. Desperate measures were taken to try to stop the spread. Quarantine measures were implemented, but they were often ineffective. People turned to prayer and religious rituals for solace and protection. The Black Death's immediate impact was a dramatic decline in population. Entire villages were wiped out. Cities became sparsely populated. The sheer number of deaths overwhelmed burial grounds. Mass graves were dug to accommodate the dead. This sudden and massive loss of life had a profound impact on English society. The social order was disrupted. Labor shortages became a significant problem. The economy was thrown into disarray. The Black Death's demographic shock had long-lasting consequences. It took centuries for England's population to recover. The plague's impact on society, economy and culture continued to be felt for generations. Section 5. Social upheaval. The Old Order Crumbles. The Black Death shattered existing social structures. The deaths of so many people, particularly in leadership positions, created a power vacuum. Traditional hierarchies were challenged. The scarcity of labor led to higher wages for peasants and laborers who survived. This gave them more bargaining power with landowners. The feudal system, which had been in place for centuries, began to weaken. Social unrest and rebellions became more common. The Peasants' Revolt of 1381, though not directly caused by the Black Death, was fueled by the social and economic changes it had set in motion. Section 6. Economic disruptions, labor, scarcity, and its aftermath. The Black Death had a profound impact on the English economy, altering it in ways that were both immediate and long-lasting. The massive loss of life led to a severe shortage of labor, as entire villages were decimated and fields lay fallow. This labor shortage had a ripple effect throughout the economy, affecting not just agriculture but also crafts and trade. With fewer workers available, wages rose significantly as landowners and merchants competed fiercely for the limited labor force. This competition for labor led to inflation, as the prices of goods and services increased to reflect the higher wages. The economy began to transition from one primarily based on land and agriculture to one increasingly reliant on trade and commerce, as merchants sought new opportunities. The Black Death forced significant changes in agricultural practices, as traditional methods were no longer sustainable. With fewer laborers, landowners were compelled to adopt new technologies and farming methods to maintain productivity. The plague also led to the decline of serfdom, as the shortage of labor gave peasants more leverage to demand better conditions or move to areas where they could find work. This newfound mobility and bargaining power fundamentally altered the social structure of medieval England. In the aftermath, towns and cities began to grow as centers of trade and learning, attracting people from rural areas. The shift in population dynamics contributed to the rise of a more diverse and dynamic economy. Guilds and trade associations became more prominent, regulating trades and ensuring quality, which further stimulated economic growth and innovation. Overall, the labor scarcity caused by the Black Death set in motion a series of economic transformations that reshaped medieval society, laying the groundwork for the modern economic systems we recognize today. Section 7, Religion and Culture, Seeking Solace and Making Sense of Tragedy. The Black Death had a profound impact on religious beliefs and cultural practices. The pandemic swept through towns and villages, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. The sheer scale of death and suffering led many to question their faith. People who once found comfort in their religious beliefs were now filled with doubt and despair. Some saw the plague as a punishment from God for their sins. They believed that their immoral actions had brought divine wrath upon them. Religious devotion intensified for some. They turned to the church with renewed fervor, hoping that their prayers and penance would bring an end to the suffering. They sought solace and salvation in prayer, pilgrimages, and acts of charity. Pilgrimages to holy sites became more frequent, and acts of charity were seen as a way to earn divine favor. Others turned away from traditional religion, blaming the church for its inability to prevent or stop the plague. The church's failure to provide answers or relief led to a crisis of faith for many. The Black Death also found its way into art and literature. Artists and writers of the time captured the grim reality of the pandemic in their works. Paintings, poems, and plays depicted the horrors of the plague and the widespread death and suffering. These creative expressions served as a way for people to process their grief and fear. These works reflected the anxieties and uncertainties of the time. They provided a mirror to the society's collective trauma, capturing the emotional and psychological impact of the Black Death. Section 8. The Black Death's Enduring Legacy, Shaping a Nation. The Black Death was a watershed moment in English history. It left an enduring legacy that shaped the country's social, economic, and cultural landscape for centuries. The plague's impact can still be seen today. The decline of feudalism and the rise of a more market-driven economy can be traced back to the Black Death. The plague also led to changes in art, literature, and religious practices. It forced people to confront their mortality and the fragility of life. The Black Death serves as a reminder of the devastating power of infectious diseases. It also highlights the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Section 9. Lessons from the Abyss, Echoes of the Black Death. The Black Death, though a horrific event, offers valuable lessons for humanity. It reminds us of the importance of public health measures, the need for scientific understanding of diseases, and the interconnectedness of the world. The plague also highlights the importance of social cohesion and the need for compassion and empathy in times of crisis. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, hope and resilience can endure. The Black Death's legacy is a complex one, marked by both tragedy and transformation. By studying this devastating pandemic, we can learn from the past and better prepare for the challenges of the future.